Nobody talks about nuclear because, yeah, we have some very salient examples of it failing. You have Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. These are all huge disasters, ecological, humanitarian disasters, and all of them were, if not preventable, at the very least foreseeable. Right? Anything built in the Soviet Union is likely going to fail at some point before its life expectancy runs out. They were running it the way that the Soviets ran Soviet things, and it happened. Fukushima, obviously a natural disaster, which again, but they were in a zone where these kind of things happen. By and large, nuclear power is very safe, very clean, very reliable. We know how to get rid of the waste product. Every nuclear power plant only produces a couple dozen tons of waste product per year. Just think about how much waste product your average coal plant produces, or
Yeah.
just in terms of carbon dioxide. So there's no comparison whatsoever. If we want to decarbonize our economy, that's the best immediate solution that we have. When cold fusion is invented or perfected and the aliens unlock that technology or give us permission to start using it, it'll probably take over. And that is, there's nothing at all from cold fusion. Like the byproduct is, there is no byproduct. It's, you're fusing two hydrogen atoms into a helium atom, and that's it. There's no radioactivity.
Welcome to the Angel Research Podcast. I'm here with my favorite guest, Alex Koyfman.
Thank you.
Welcome, Alex.
Good to be here.
I say that about all the guests.
I know.
Actually, no, I don't think I have. Before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe, and join our Discord. You can message Alex Koyfman directly on, I don't know if he's going to say directly. Don't send him any weird photos or anything like that, but if you post in there, Koyfman's lurking.
I might respond.
You might respond.
Yeah.
You're in there lurking, talking about stuff.
I like to keep my comments measured and rare because
yeah.
the value goes up that way.
Yeah.
The less you say, the more valuable your words are.
Well, I find most of these online things are, the majority of people are just there lurking. They're watching.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It's
like radio. How many people call in versus listen?
Right. So, how's it going?
Well, it's going well. I'm having, I don't know how well this is. I mean, you know what? These conversations are supposed to find relevance with our audience, and so I think this may be relevant. I'm experiencing firsthand the complete and utter breakdown of customer service in this country.
Okay.
We're doing multiple home improvement projects right now.
Right.
One is a completely redone kitchen. And one is the replacement of about 2/3 of our windows because our house was built in the late 50s. And so 2/3 of the windows are still the original double hungs, which you've probably seen a million times in the U.S. It's like colonial style grid pattern made of wood, double hung. And but after a couple of years, they dry up and they start to get kind of crappy. So we decided to replace them with Andersen Series 400 windows, like top of the line shit, right?
Series 400.
400, not 300, 400. Like wood, they're wooden with aluminum sheathing around them, so they're really nice. They're, the only way to pay more is if we've gotten Andersen renewal by Andersen, which is just like, I'm pretty sure they give you a hand job along with the windows because it's full service. Anyway, I'm sorry about that, but anyway. So the windows, our neighborhood has colonial style grid patterns everywhere, and the HOA requests that you maintain that look, right? At least from the front of the house where people can see it. They sent us the wrong grid pattern on every single window. It was a grid pattern I've never even seen before. And this is after multiple emails where I tried to clarify this exact thing.
Right.
And the guy said it's not all black and white. Not all black and white. That was his response to what I thought was a pretty black and white question. So they fucked up every single goddamn window. And now we're waiting for new ones to get installed. And so that's happening simultaneously with the kitchen. We went away on vacation 2 weeks ago, came back with our old kitchen torn out and half the new kitchen installed. We bought these pure wood cabinets, like real actual wood cabinets, not particle board or any weird filler. And they came in seriously 3 shades darker. I can post a picture of how bad it is. They came in exactly the same color as our flooring in the kitchen. And so we now just have a wooden room that we really weren't going for. We wanted sort of multiple tones. Anyway, bottom line is everybody's trying to find an excuse. Nobody's actually doing their job. And it just blows me away, we had choices. We could have gone with cheaper options. We could have gone with different options. And it was like we did what we thought was fail safe. But paying more money, you think that you're gonna get closer to what you want. But no. The only thing that is more, I guess, developed and more elaborate are their excuses. That's
Right.
it. And I find that to be sort of endemic. Like that's what's going on in society today.
Yeah, I mean, Brian's talked about this a lot. The customer service indicator is basically like when it's that bad, it just means there's basically full unemployment, right? Everybody that is able-bodied and able
Is
to work
employed.
is employed, and that's not always the best for production, right?
Sure.
There's a certain percentage of the people out there that shouldn't be employed, or they're employed in the wrong
Yeah.
job, but there's
Well, I think Jordan Peterson said that those particular people you're talking about, you're like talking about like the sub 80 IQ contingent. He said that they're better off going into the army because the only other option is for them to do damage here on our streets. It's better off to send them somewhere else and do damage there because, and, hopefully easy to train, hopefully
do you think that your situation is more of a reflection of just a lack of skilled labor in like that sort of thing, like the carpenters, you know what I mean? Because what we're seeing now, where probably both of our generations was, you need to go to college, you need to get X number of degrees, because you don't want to end up being a plumber or a tradesman for a living.
Those are good jobs.
No, they are, exactly. Yeah. But now it's like it's so hard to find people that are skilled like that and also can provide a level of customer service and
it
care.
may reach the next level because I'm finding that the actual labor, like the guys doing all the installation work, are doing a fine job.
Right.
They're doing exactly what they need to do. They know what they need to. It was like middle management.
Yeah.
The guys coming to take the measurements and then send all the crap to the company to get it produced. That's where the fuck ups are, right? And I can't blame the installers. And they're also like, the guys installing our windows are they're like high school kids, and they're just doing their job quietly. Just it's middle management, and so I think the problem is getting deeper because, I mean, I don't know. Is middle management is essential? I mean, we need to have our lieutenants.
Is it?
The lieutenants of capitalism need to be competent, don't they?
Well, I think those are the type of people that can be replaced by AI, right?
And where do they go? I mean, where are you going to send them? Or are they just going to get free money and do what they do best, which is something else?
It's possible.
I mean, it's I don't know. When it gets this bad, you start to wonder what's going to happen. Like, 2-3 decades down the line. And I know you have kids, and we often like jokingly talk on Slack about us being at a peak empire or late stage empire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just something that people talk about but I don't recall that being a conversation even 20 years ago about that sort of thing.
No, we laughed at idiocracy 20 years ago, and now it's like scary, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah. So, and with accelerating technology, it's something that we're going to have to deal with. Like I said, our kids are going to have to deal with, and even just us, people that are middle age, are going to have to deal with. It's not like what our parents could kind of do has been like, I'll kind of be dead by the time that whole thing takes over. Technology is accelerating so quickly that, we will have witnessed
we'll be dealing with it.
8 tracks going to, sentient robots within one lifetime, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of impressive when you look at it, but my grandfather, who was really, really old, he was born in 1903, okay, so he lived to be 106 years old. He was born in the year that the Wright brothers flew
No shit.
their first powered flight, and by the time he was 66, we were on the moon. So that was, people living then must have thought we were going to, build a Dyson sphere by now. And instead, we're just, not doing that.
Well, it's kind of funny because, even just, I guess, movies and films 30, 40 years ago that were set in, 2025 or, it's 2024 now, flying cars.
Sure, every time.
We're definitely going to have flying cars.
Sure.
I don't think, and maybe we actually are, because I've been talking to, Simpkins, Alex Bolden, that they're like, oh yeah, flying cars actually are. They're not really going to be flying cars. They're more going to be
like huge quadrotors.
Right.
Which
right.
I saw at CES, I think it was 2015 or 2016. So almost 10 years ago, I saw a quadrotor that could lift 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy shit, I mean, that's a flying car, definitely. And you don't need to pilot it. It just does its own thing. And if there's a power outage, the battery goes, then it can safely parachute or auto rotate back down to the ground. So I was like, yeah, they're coming, and still, it's been 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been 10 years at least since Amazon said in 5 years we're going to have drone delivery.
Yeah.
And I think they scrapped that. So there's certain things that are coming, and I think you deal with that a lot in what you do, right? Because there are things that rapidly advance that you want to make sure you get in.
Yeah.
And it'd be kind of before the herd. But there are stuff that it's just like, hey, you see the potential here, but it's not quite there, and maybe it's a couple years, maybe 4 or 5 years longer than you think.
There's a lot of that. I think that one of the ways to de-risk that approach is you take something that's not a new concept, like a battery, for example,
right?
And then there's a new twist on a battery, like a battery that's got AI managing, how it charges and discharges its individual
It's
cells.
like these transitional technologies, right?
So you have something cutting edge and revolutionary, but you have it addressing a well-known need, advancing a well-known technology. That's kind of, you've de-risked that aspect of the investment. There are, of course, things that are completely, out of left field, like launching things into space using a centrifuge, which some guy's doing right now out west. Yeah, that's not for me. I think that's mostly fun and games.
Yeah, and it's, when you deal in the realm of software like AI, those are the things that can be sort of rapidly iterated through.
Sure.
But you just talked about your house built in the 50s. Like, we're still living on a planet where, this building that we're in here, it says it was built in 1890, but that's only because the Baltimore fire destroyed all the records. Before then, so it's probably older than that. It's still standing.
It's probably better than a lot of the stuff they're building today. Well, I mean, I know my house.
Well, the AC units keep going up. That's why it's still hot.
Well, those are all built recently.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
new.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, my 50s era house is better than my 2000 era house that I moved out of before it, for sure. But yeah, the economy of quality, I think, is going away, and it's just the economy of quantity now. That's what we're dealing with. And square footage, size, volume, all takes precedence over quality. And so, kind of like an interesting. I've been talking with a number of people recently about the question of what is rich, like what is wealth, where is that threshold, and is that threshold a constant everywhere you go? It's obviously different everywhere you go, but at what point can you define wealth? We were in St. Thomas 2 weeks ago, and so I saw I'd never been there before, and there it's like very stratified. You can see the differences between wealth and non-wealth very clearly. But in this country, in our society, where's that magic line? Where do you think it lies?
It's always whoever is you perceive as above you is rich, and whoever below you is not.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So because you take, I mean, I don't know, I think it might have been, to bring up our friend Jordan Peterson, I think was talking about basically, like, if you make more than $3,000 a year, you're in the top 1% globally in terms of your income.
More than 3,000 or 33,000?
33,000.
33,000, which is...
Top 1%, because everyone's like, oh, kill the 1%. It's like, well, 1% globally? Because most people, if they're gainfully employed in the U.S., they're in the top 1%.
That's actually half of the national median.
Right.
In this country, it's close to 60,000 a year. That's not the average. Right. That's the median. Yeah. That's the fairest expression.
So you talk about cost of living. California, it's XYZ, and New York, and these places that are really high cost of living, and salaries are higher to kind of compensate that. Housing's higher, but you go to another part of the world, and you can really see the discrepancy between that. So it is sort of, we talk about late stage, and I mean, you're sitting here complaining about your kitchen cabinet
Yeah, I mean,
in your gated community.
I'm not in the. I don't.
Oh, you're not in a gated community anymore.
No, we tried. We dropped that.
You dropped that. You're back with the people.
I am.
You're a man of the people.
I am a man of the people with no gate.
So people, it's all relative, right? And so zooming back out.
My question is more like what, to consider yourself wealthy, what kind of life situation do you need to be in? As far as debt goes, as far as disposable income, maybe that's the question I'm asking. Not any number so much.
Right. Well, I mean, I think air conditioning is a big thing, and heat, a refrigerator.
Okay. So that's
those are things that 50 years ago, not a lot of people had. Indoor plumbing.
50 years ago in this country or globally? I guess globally we're still probably there.
Well, yeah, maybe more like 80 years ago.
Yeah.
Well,
for AC, sure.
Central air conditioning, I should say, indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
That sort of things. Yeah, but now it's, every person has to have a car, and not only a car, it's got to be a fuel-efficient car.
And not just one, probably one for every driver in the house.
Well, yeah.
And you need a certain square footage per person, per occupant of the house, which I think is probably doubled or tripled.
Well, yeah, people talk about the average house price and how it's going up and all that, but they never look at the average square footage of a house, and then also just the certain everything that's now required to be put in a home for safety reasons. I mean, even where I live in Howard County, Maryland, anything I think built after 2011 has to have a sprinkler system in it. I think that's pretty standard. Yeah, in the city, I think it's kind of
you mean fire?
Like a fire,
for your lawn.
No,
Jesus.
No.
Okay.
No, they have to have a sprinkler system,
Sure.
and if you're building a house, it's like, hey, how much is put a sprinkler? And that raises the cost of the house, right? But it's also a quality there.
Yeah.
There's certain safety egresses you have, all these special codes. The door, it has to be this and has to be space here and all that. So people compare that to something that was in 1930 you could buy a house for $6,000, and it's like, well, they didn't even have indoor plumbing, air conditioning, or what I mean, kind of
1/3 the size.
Yeah.
Probably.
So I think that's failed. That comparison has failed a lot. And then there's also just community amenities that are in certain communities that
Sure.
are in places. So I think we've in the U.S. have been living pretty well for a really extended period of time that people are,
So you're rejecting the life is hard argument that's kind of being
Absolutely.
bandied about.
Absolutely. Yeah, because just look at the rest of the world.
Nobody would want to live like the boomers did when they were little tiny kids.
No,
like
absolutely
Fred
not.
Savage in Wonder Years.
No, and people are expected to, a cell phone. You have a tiny supercomputer.
Right.
Everybody has a tiny supercomputer in their
yeah.
pocket. If they don't, you're like, we have a
I've
guy
seen
here.
homeless people with smartphones, housing disabled, challenged.
Yes.
With
proper term.
computers that are like 100 times more powerful than NASA had.
Right. So I think all of that, they call it standard of living, quality of life, has been severely overlooked when we look in terms of inflation and all this kind of thing. It's still like, look, you still want to provide for your family, and build wealth and be able to enjoy that. But I do think that the focus on a lot of things has been sort of grossly outweighed. But maybe that's because I'm sitting here with a 2.75% mortgage rate, and I'm not trying to buy a house like some of our younger friends, and with mortgage rates are at 7-8%.
Back in the early 90s, I still have the settlement papers from when my parents bought their first house in Delaware. It was like a 17% mortgage rate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
so we've been there.
That's 3 times what it's at now, which is bad now, right? And what happens when you get a mortgage rate like that? You buy your house and you pay it off as quickly as possible. It forces financial responsibility
right
on you, And so now we have people complaining about it, specifically those people who are trying to pay off a 17% mortgage rate, that they're homeowners and that they're keeping their house off the market, and it's killing the first-time home buyer and this and that. And so, you and I are getting older. I guess we're getting into that age range where we start talking about
The younger crew and
yeah,
how
I
they're
know.
entitled and all that.
I don't want to be that guy, but it's just so tempting and easy,
It is. It is. And I mean, people are living longer, right? And, I think going back to the housing situation, I think there's probably inventory is a big issue, right? And, everywhere you look, I mean, I know this was the issue in San Francisco and California is they just didn't want to allow new housing to be built because the people that
already
live there
they
are
their
like,
big
nope,
yards.
yeah, I like this. No, I don't want, affordable housing
That's-
going in.
Yeah,
I'd
well,
rather have people posted up in tents,
Sure.
sort of thing,
that's
that get cleared out occasionally.
classic rich
Right.
democratic philosophy is not in my backyard.
Right.
So, I mean,
But I think
natural.
I think it's happening. I mean, you're seeing a lot of move to the rural areas. Texas, has been exploding, and even places like Tennessee and these other like sort of rural areas are exploding. And it's just, it takes time for people to, deciding to uproot your family and move to a cheaper, better quality of life area, whether it's a new country or a new state or a new sort of area. It takes time for it to sort of percolate through the economy. It's not as simple as just like, we ran out of, we need more electric batteries, because of demand, and then it kind of changes, within a couple of years. This is like a decades-long shift that I think we're still in the middle of.
Yeah, they happen.
They do.
These
So
shifts.
speaking of electric batteries and power, I mean, we talked about the quadcopters, right? Everything built now is built electrically,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Like, what are they building anything? You got long haul trucking still is going to be using diesel for a while, I think. Like that
I
sort
think
of
marine
thing.
diesel is probably going to be a
Right.
thing for a while.
Yeah, they're not going to be powering these big
Yeah, I
ships that run into bridges on electric. But the grid and all this stuff is AI, crypto, whatever, huge energy demand, and I think you're in the camp of that. There's really only one way in the near term to solve that.
We're talking nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not. I don't think there's another camp. I mean, this country.
I think there is. I mean,
Well, that's not a real camp.
that
those
wants to
people
do
aren't-
solar and wind for everything.
No, I mean those people aren't serious, and you can look. I keep bringing this up, and it's a pain in the ass. We bought this investment property out in Western Maryland, and it was. I realized a couple months after buying it that it is perfectly suited for a solar farm, and so now we have a lease with this company. Before we got approved for that lease, they had to do like 10 feasibility studies on the angle of the land and how much shadow falls during different times of the day and this and that. And we were located super close to the transformer, which is what you want.
All right.
Which means that, in my mind, building a solar farm isn't just as easy as finding a plot of land somewhere and sticking a bunch of panels on it. It takes a lot of research and luck for it to work. And the economics of that changes every day, which means that the company that signed a contract with us, they've reserved the right to pull out at any time, even after they
Really?
started building. Yes, because it may become not feasible for them. They have to clean up after themselves. That's part of the thing.
So if they put the solar panels up and 3 years from now they're like, nah, then they have to take the solar panels down, I guess.
They have to clean up and
Gotcha.
return the land to an uncontaminated. They can't regrow the trees that they have to cut down, obviously, because it's wooded at the moment. But anyway, I don't want to.
Who gets the money for the tree? I'm assuming they can sell that wood.
I mean, it's not really timber quality
Gotcha.
shit. It's
just a bunch of brush.
It's like
and stuff.
recently replanted like evergreens. They probably do. I'm not going to argue with them because I know how much it costs to clear land, but. The point is, it's not as easy as just putting up more solar panels. The Chinese they just fired up the biggest solar farm in the world, and let me see if I can remember the statistics. It's going to be powerful enough to supply energy for Slovenia, I believe, and so it's like 60 square miles. a nuclear reactor could do a much better job of this almost anywhere.
Yeah.
There is an exclusion zone around most large nuclear reactors of like 10 miles for safety reasons, but within those land limitations, nevertheless, you can get a lot more power out of it. And
Right.
so the U.S. is the biggest nuclear energy producer in the world. We produce something like 30% of it, which few people talk about. It's only 20% of our demand, but 30% of global energy production is us.
And is that because, I mean, I know France for a while was a big.
They had up to 70% of their demand was
Right.
met by nuclear. We have a lot more demand. We're like 4 or 5 times the population, first of all. So yeah, that's these are just basic statistics. Nobody talks about nuclear because we have some very salient examples of it failing. You have Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. These are all huge disasters, ecological, humanitarian disasters, and all of them were, if not preventable, at the very least foreseeable. Right? Anything built in the Soviet Union is likely going to fail at some point before its life expectancy runs out. They were running it the way that the Soviets ran Soviet things, and it happened. Fukushima, obviously a natural disaster, which again, but they were in a zone where these kind of things happen. By and large, nuclear power is very safe, very clean, very reliable. We know how to get rid of the waste product. Every nuclear power plant only produces a couple dozen tons of waste product per year. Just think about how much waste product your average coal plant produces, or just in terms of carbon dioxide. So there's no comparison whatsoever. If we want to decarbonize our economy, that's the best immediate solution that we have. When cold fusion is invented or perfected and the aliens unlock that technology or give us permission to start using it, it'll probably take over. And that is, there's nothing at all from cold fusion. Like the byproduct is, there is no byproduct. It's you're fusing 2 hydrogen atoms into a helium atom, and that's it. There's no radioactivity. So
Right. Well, and they have done that in the lab. Right,
like with 1 or 2 molecules, I
yeah,
guess.
They
right.
got to, I think it was last year, they got to whatever the parity was in terms of like input output. But like you said, it was a very tiny. It's still.
But if they even a little
decades
bit,
away,
sure. I mean,
but
it'll come.
Yeah. So, but in the meantime, we're talking the next 20 to 50 years.
That's probably our best chance to get
Right.
off fossil fuels.
Right.
I'll stick to that statement.
Right.
And that doesn't mean we shouldn't put solar panels on rooftops. And
No,
stuff.
I mean, you talked about China doing solar, but they also, I think, have over 100 nuclear plants planned for
they
the
know
next.
about diversifying.
Yeah, and I guarantee you. I mean, maybe this is a good thing or a bad thing. They're going to get it done. They're when they want to get stuff done, they get it done.
It's authoritarian governments.
Yeah,
they do
quickly.
have that benefit.
Right.
When they need something done, they just put the foot down and that's it. They built this solar farm in the middle of a desert also. So we don't have a huge amount of. I guess we do. You could take half of Arizona and Nevada. But it's still not that huge. I mean, it's like less than 1% of their national power needs. So
in terms of your investment sort of strategy as relates to nuclear, big trend over the next 10, 20, 50 years, where are you looking at? The fuel, the people, the utilities, the people that are making reactors? Or...
there are a couple of good, I think, good approaches that I would personally be interested in. Fuel is big because the U.S. is the biggest consumer of nuclear fuel, produces a tiny, tiny amount. I think last year was something like 50 tons of production, and it's been falling.
Right, and most of it, I think, is Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan is like the number 1 producer today.
Okay.
And
Canada, I think, is a decent amount.
Canada, like, as recently as like 2 or 3 years ago, was our number 1 exporter, or number 1 supplier. Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, I think as late as last year, were providing 50% of our supply, which is just terrifying because, I mean, Russia, obviously, we know about all the problems there, but Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, former Soviet republics, they launched all their rockets out of Kazakhstan, right? So they're pretty much, Putin's sphere of influence is very present there. We're getting half of our uranium from them. And then there's the question of uranium refinement, which is the next step. So this new generation of reactors that you read about a lot are the miniature modular,
SMRs, right?
Small modular reactor.
Reactor. Okay.
Right. So
and how small are they?
Well, they vary in size, but the ones I've read about are they can be portable. Like they can be the size of like a cargo container,
Okay.
but they can get bigger also.
Right.
So I think the one that Bill Gates was breaking ground on last week was going to be bigger than that. But still, it's nothing like that huge. Like
And kind of the idea too, from my understanding, is typically when you build at least in the U.S., if you're building a nuclear reactor, which there hasn't been one built in a while.
they just fired up the first new one in like I think since 2016 or 2017, like just like in the last couple of weeks in
Right.
Georgia.
So and they have to site, kind of like you were talking about, they have to site each site and basically build a custom nuclear plant for that area and the thing. And they have to go through the approval process for each one of those things.
Sure.
So the idea with these SMRs is, you could have any number of companies create them,
Yeah.
but they only have to get it approved once, and they have that reactor approved, and then it basically can go anywhere.
Right.
It
was modular.
Yeah, is provided you get approval from.
You can mount these things on huge springs that will absorb any earthquake, for example. So that's a huge issue right there that can be erased. Then the exclusion zone. So it's 10 miles for a standard reactor. So that's 10-mile radius. That's how many square miles is that? What is it, pi r squared? That's how.
Don't make me do math on the fly.
We're talking 50 to 100 square miles have to be excluded for any nuclear power plant. Granted, it could be a number of reactors. For the SMRs, it's only the size of the facility itself, right? So I guess wherever the reactor is and the administrative facilities, that's all that needs to be excluded.
Okay, so much smaller footprint.
Tiny footprint. They're much cheaper, like upwards of 500 times cheaper.
Well, yeah, because I don't know.
They produce less.
Yeah, I think the one you were just talking about that went online, I think it was somewhere like $20 billion or something.
35.
35
the
billion.
one in Georgia.
Yeah, that was $35 billion
$35
to
billion
build that.
$35 billion dollars. So for like $60 or $70 million for a small reactor that can just power one facility or one hospital or part of an air base, something like that. That makes a lot of sense. It takes a lot of pressure off of the grid, right? Because it's local. It's basically an isolated grid. It feeds the one client, and that's it. You don't need a bunch of wires in and out. So and for that we need highly refined uranium. And so, but getting back to the nuclear fuel play, there is a company that we've been covering for a couple of weeks now that is the only company in the U.S. that's licensed to produce this highly enriched uranium specifically for SMRs.
Okay, so it's a special fuel just for SMRs.
It's special fuel. It's like what's the cost of uranium right now? It's like Jesus Christ. Anyway, it's something like 100 times more expensive than standard uranium. But it's highly enriched, and this is the one company that can produce it. There are other companies globally that can, but I think we're learning some pretty hard lessons about relying on potentially hostile governments for strategic materials like that.
Right.
So that is an interesting, very interesting play. It's not a microcap. This company is almost at $1 billion, and
okay, so this isn't a microcap insider sort of
no, it's not.
flyer.
No, it's not. This is like a 3-5 year hold of a company that's already stable. An industry that hasn't been getting a whole lot of press lately for one reason or another, and yet uranium is at like record prices right now. So.
Well, it seems like before Fukushima, nuclear was a pretty, it was hot, right? And Fukushima basically put a big pause and pin on that for a while. But that's been, what was Fukushima, 2007, 2008, around that?
Was it that long ago? I thought it was
2011, 2010,
2012 or 14 maybe. I thought it was it's been 10 years.
Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, we should know that. There's no excuse for that.
No, it's been a while though. It's been at least 10 to 15 years, I think. So I think the longer things go on and people sort of, it's less in their mind about this quote unquote disaster, which they said no one died directly from. I don't believe.
Well, by that standard, only like 30 people died in Chernobyl, and that's like the worst ever. So, Yeah, I think that nevertheless, there's a lot of stigma. Just the word
Yeah.
nuclear brings up stigma. And right now we're getting bipartisan support because, people are coming to their senses, thankfully, at least on this one issue. And so hopefully in this country, we're going to have like a real, like a golden era of nuclear power
Yeah.
and get a lot of things done in the process.
Yeah, it's wild that it's taken so long because, back then, the first nuclear power plants, it was basically hailed as like, this is,
Well,
this is going to be it, right? This is how we power the future.
right. And then some bad things happened,
Yeah.
and we realized that you need to regulate this and really study
Right.
it hard. And we overdid that, and it took too long.
And we built nuclear bombs.
Right. We built a lot of those.
Then the aliens showed up. You
then
notice
the-
that the aliens showed up after.
Well, that's when, we start to kind of get on their radar.
Right.
Right. We
Yeah,
reach
they're
that
like-
stage where if we're capable of blowing ourselves up, they should come and say hello. And Star Trek is when we achieved the warp drive.
Right. Okay.
That was the threshold technology to
Yeah.
get invited into the Federation of Planets.
Yeah. I think that makes sense because, dealing with some dangerous stuff that can potentially end, not nuclear power per se, but nuclear weapons, obviously. So same quote unquote technology, but one can lead to destruction and one can help us, safely and cleanly power, flying cars.
Yeah, just charge more batteries.
Cool.
So,
So this, you said this play is not a microcap, so it's a
looks small. I would call
it's
it a
an
small,
investment in the Crow's Nest
Yes,
newsletter.
yes. This is a Crow's
Excel.
Nest stock.
So I think if our listeners are interested in checking that out, we'll put a link in the description to sign up to the Crow's Nest. You can check out Koyfman's nuclear
The
plays.
Oppenheimer stock.
I love that.
Yeah,
The Oppenheimer
it's good.
stock.
It's got a
I finally watched Oppenheimer like
you
a couple
think?
of months ago. I thought it was really good. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I mean it's. I think.
I mean, what's his name won an Oscar for it. It had to
yeah,
have
that
been
doesn't
good,
mean-
right?
it
I don't
doesn't.
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't.
it was a good. I mean, anytime that they can successfully create a character that's complex and you kind of you like him and you hate him and you feel his pain and
Yeah.
you don't want to be in his position, I think they've done a good job, and so
Right.
they did that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know how accurate it was, but I think it like all those, it kind of tells the story.
It wasn't a black and white story, which
Yeah,
makes me
right.
think that
Which
it's
is real.
probably real.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of, like I said, you kind of hate him, but you feel for him, and then important shit was done. There were assholes present who were trying to keep him down.
Yeah, and that's life.
That is life.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us.
absolutely.
And next time, I promise the air conditioning will be fixed. I hope.
You
Next time you're
promise?
on. No, I don't promise. I hope.
Okay.
It's hot. It's hot out today in Baltimore. That's for sure. All right. Again, thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. Join the Crow's Nest, and we'll see you next time.